I want to first of all begin by just saying thank you again, Pastor. You have gifted us and blessed us by being here at the Canaan Church this year. I was pleased and excited that you accepted our invitation, and hope that whatever we have messed up on this year, you'll give us a chance to make up on by coming and sharing with us again. All of that said, what I'm trying to do here, Dr. Haynes, is when we have guests come in, to try to just interview them and share some time together. To that end, and on that note, would you begin? I want to begin by just having you tell us a little bit about you, your ministry, your life, just some basic information.
Okay. My name is Fredrick Haynes, Fredrick Douglass Haynes III. I'm named after my grandfather, who pastored for almost 40 years, Third Baptist in San Francisco. He was succeeded by my father, Fredrick Douglass Haynes Jr. So in essence, I do have ministry in my DNA, and with that being the case, that history has informed my identity in a sense, and at the same time created my sense of what it means to minister in this present age. As much as I appreciate my heritage, I have a responsibility, of course, to be relevant to right now as they were relevant to their day. And so I think that's the best way to begin. I've been pastoring 30 years next month, Friendship West Baptist Church in Dallas. And when I went there, we had 83 members. And now they say we have in excess of 12,000. So God has blessed us. I think we've had 1, 2, 3. This is our 4th facility we've been in. And we sit on 60 acres of land. And our hope by way of ministry is that we are a Christian community in the community, trying to impact and transform the community. And we consider ourselves to be a creative, cutting-edge ministry, making a difference both spiritually and socially. And so that of course again comes from a history that informs who I am and my sense of ministry in terms of what we do.
Now I should say to our listeners, those who are watching, and to you again, Dr. Haynes, we both come from the same place, that is the Bay Area. I said to our church family on Sunday night when our revival started, that you're now conducting, and repeated again last night, that there were a number of preachers. I mean, California has produced a number of quality, creative clergy persons. And I mentioned that in the generation that you were in, I call some names that I won't call now, it has been interesting to me, and one of the things I'm interested to find out is that God has used everyone in his own unique way. Preaching is truth through personality. But your ministry in particular seems to have taken off, if I can use that language. I'm not trying to be secular, but seems to have taken off in a way with a trajectory that others have not. I'm not asking you to compare yourself to others, but can you help us understand what some of the keys are, in your opinion, to why and just how the ministry, the preaching ministry of Fredrick Douglass Haynes III, as well as the pastoral ministry of Fred Haynes has gone so far, it seems so fast?
Well, I mean, it always is going to begin with the blessing and grace of God. I can't, take credit for, any trajectory that I've experienced apart from, God's hand just showing up and making sure, number one, I'm in the right place. I happen to be in a city where the population continues to grow. A lot of people started moving back south to Dallas. And so I was privileged to be, again, in the right place and at the right time. And on top of that, hopefully doing my part to offer the right kind of ministry. And with that being the case, again, for me, it is so important, man, that you minister to the age you're called to serve in.
Okay. Okay.
I can't minister to my grandfather's age because I'm not in that age right now. He did wonderfully well, quite successful, to use, again, secular terminology. And so my responsibility was to look at, okay, what's happening right now? For me, it is so important. E.K. Bailey taught me this, because when I talk about right place, right time, it also has a lot to do with the right people you expose yourself to.
Okay.
And so I was exposed to E.K. Bailey, who has done just a remarkable work there in Dallas and around the country, and a brother of blessed memory who I will always be grateful to.
Sure.
Bailey hit me with these things that have, again, shaped a lot of what I do. Number one, the importance of developing and discipling black men.
Okay.
There is a crisis in our community as it relates to black men.
Sure.
Michelle Alexander says, tragically, you have more brothers in prison today than we had in slavery in 1850. There's something wrong with that.
Sure.
And so for a church to be relevant to its time and be concerned about who Jesus referred to as the least of these, the most vulnerable, then you have to have a ministry that targets in a very specific and relevant way the needs and concerns and crises of African American men. And so we've done that. We're doing that. It's something that we prioritize. And so as a consequence, I think that motto from Bailey, which I took, Haynesized it, made it relevant to the ministry God was calling me to, and that has been a part of our growth. On top of that, Bailey emphasized strong biblical preaching. He called it expository preaching, of course. And, you know, for me, people come to church on Sunday, and I read this piece in USA Today back in the 90s, and it's so relevant today. It said that when people go to church on Sunday, they go hoping to have an encounter with God. So if you don't have a worship experience where the word is preached in such a way, the worship is so electric with the presence of God that people don't feel like, I encountered God today, then they have another option to go next Sunday, someplace else. And so for me, those things, right place, right time, coming in contact with right people like E.K. Bailey, like Manuel Scott Sr., who blessed me in ways that are immeasurable in terms of character, in terms of prioritizing preaching. Manuel Scott did that for me. Jeremiah Wright Jr. blesses me to this day with his social consciousness and his sense of, you know, unapologetically being who you are culturally. And so as a consequence, ain't no shame in my black game. I'm proud of who God made me. And with that being the case, all of those things, I think, reflect God just basically saying, I'm going to do something a little special with you, and make sure you hook up with the right folk, you're in the right place at the right time, and you make sure you do the right thing.
Okay, good. Now, you mentioned a number of preaching personalities, Dr. Haynes. Are there any other personalities? And I know the list could go on and on, but I mean perhaps some other major key personalities that have helped to shape who Fredrick Douglass Haynes III is with regard to preaching and pastoring. You mentioned Dr. Jeremiah Wright Jr. You mentioned Manuel L. Scott Sr. You mentioned I forgot who you just mentioned, the other one.
E.K. Bailey.
E.K. Bailey, Dr. E.K. Bailey. And I know we talked before about A. Lewis Patterson and some others. Any other persons that have really shaped you and your theology, your preaching, that you can help us with?
Without question. I mean, it goes back to when I was growing up in San Francisco and we hosted the citywide revival, and I'm exposed to Fredrick G. Sampson.
Yeah, sure.
And Dr. Sampson blew me away with making, and I love this, intelligence in the pulpit sexy. That's what he did in a brilliant fashion. And so for me, I began a pursuit. I said, I want to be intelligent. I want to have a mind that is always growing, expanding, and sharp. And so, you know, Dr. Sampson, you mentioned Dr. C.A.W. Clark, who again is another person in Dallas who I was exposed to, who took me under his wing and was very kind. At Bishop College, Dr. Harry S. Wright. Again, intelligent, creative, illustrative, and making all of that just absolutely enticing, beautiful, and appealing. And then on top of that, you know, I mean, just richly blessed by the ministry, as you mentioned, of Dr. A. Lewis Patterson, from a distance more so than anything else. But I could not help but be impacted by the poetic power and prophetic brilliance of Dr. Gardner C. Taylor. And then I became a vicarious protege because I was not around during his lifetime, but Martin Luther King Jr. in terms of, again, brilliance, a prophetic sense of social justice ministry, all of that wrapped up in one powerful ministry. And so for me, all of those, and there are many, I can go on and on, both in my generation, from Ralph West to Jeffrey Johnson, people like that have blessed and impacted my life and challenged and stretched me, which is another important piece for me, Doc, and that is, I forgot who said this, Jim Rome. He says, you are the average of the 5 closest people in your life. You are the average of the 5 closest people.
That's good.
That hit me so hard because it's like, okay, well, who am I running with?
Absolutely.
Who am I hanging out? Because I'm their average.
Sharpens.
Come on now. Iron sharpens iron. And so when you look at that, I started just really looking at that, and I've been
blessed. Who am I hanging with?
That's why I got to call the names of Ralph West and Maurice Watson and Jeffrey Johnson and Rudy McKissick, because those brothers, Michael Eric Dyson, all for me make me feel good if that's my 5 group. And I don't mind being the average of that group. And so when I look at some who may not be doing as well as their gifts in ministry, could it be that they hanging with the wrong crowd?
Elder, you're helping me. When I was at Grand Canyon College, now Grand Canyon University, F.G. Sampson came and did our spiritual emphasis week. And you know, we didn't have a lot of persons of color. First of all, this is Arizona, if I can say that. Secondly, you know a lot about Arizona. I won't say anything about our governor or about our sheriffs, you know, and all that. You know, but now on that note, it was spiritual emphasis week. They invited Dr. Sampson. They were having lunch, and they asked me to come to the table where he was sitting at, because only a handful of us, literally, in the school. And I got a chance to sit next to him and talk to him. And as a kid then, in college, I said, I'm going to get a chance to meet, Lord, one day, some famous preachers and ask them all the same question. And so I kind of started this quest, and I asked Dr. Sampson, what is the difference between good preaching and great preaching? And you know him. He kind of looked up at me, kept eating his salad. And I say this in all love, I mean, kind of lettuce flying everywhere. He kept eating his salad. And then he said, you owe God a rested body, a prepared mind, and a willing spirit. Wasn't exactly the answer I was looking for in terms of him necessarily answering the question, but I didn't have the nerve to come back, you know, and say something else. But that stuck with me over the years. And I think about that Trinity, that triad truth that he said to me: rested body, prepared mind, willing spirit. On that note, Fredrick Douglass Haynes III is one of the busiest pastors in the nation, quite frankly, on the globe. Just in our time, these last few days, with you being here at Canaan, again, you graciously, agreed to come. Caught a flight Monday morning, going back to your home church to preach a funeral. Caught a flight coming back to preach last night. Was headed to Washington, D.C. today for a White House event. We prayed against it, and so other circumstances caused you not to have to go. You're here to close the revival tonight, and on and on and on it goes. Question: how do you balance, and what would you say to the preacher, to the pastor who's watching? How do you balance ministry, marriage, your schedule, and all of that, so that you have a rested body, a prepared mind, and a willing spirit?
And I steal this answer from a beautiful brother. He sings "Never Would Have Made It." Can't think of his name
I know
right
you're talking
now.
about.
But anyway, he was asked that question. He was on Good Morning America, and he was singing "Never Would Have Made It." And so they interviewed him afterwards. They asked him, we hear you here, there, everywhere. How do you balance, family, church, travel, all of that? He said, I don't balance. He said, I'm not a I'm not trying to juggle, because I'm not a juggler. He says, I don't balance, I prioritize. And he says, what I simply do is do what comes first, and then I do what comes second, I do what comes third, and everything else has to fall in place. And so that has been, for me, very helpful. And that is when I look at my schedule and I look at what I have to get done, I got to start with God. So my prayer life is priority. My devotional time, that has to be something that is non-negotiable. Spending time with God. I'm not trying to be super holy. I'm just simply saying that, for me, that's got to be. So, and I'll give you an example. If I'm praying or reading or meditating, listening, whatever I'm doing, ain't no phone, ain't no, that schedule is uninterruptible. And that ain't a word, but it works. And then, after that, family. And so my family sets the schedule for what happens next. After that, my church. After my church, then I get to, ministry outside of the church, be it community or, evangelistic work around the country. So it has to do with prioritizing. And I try to keep that. If I keep that, then I'm going to have those three pieces. If I don't keep that, then I ain't going to have a rested body, a willing spirit, or a prepared mind.
That is major stuff. I heard Pastor Charles was with us last week, H.B. Charles Jr., preaching on Tuesday night. And one of the things that he said, he didn't say it Tuesday, but he said on another occasion, is that we need to really prioritize our personal quiet time and not let anybody, he was talking in the context of preaching preparation, but not let anybody invade that. Because when that is invaded, your priority is messed up. If the preacher pastor's primary priority is to, some put in this order, preach, teach, pray, cast vision, he said don't let anybody take away from your prep time as it relates to preaching. I think I hear you pushing that same principle as it relates to this other piece. Wayne Cordero, I was given a book by a mutual friend of ours, Dr. Jerry M. Carter Jr., and Jerry said to me, he said, Sherman, you're kind of too busy, just with a lot of stuff, and you ain't got to be busy on an international scale or a national scale. You can be busy at home. He said, man, you're too busy. You're doing too much stuff. He recommended to me a book by Wayne Cordero called Leading on Empty. Now, here's a quote from Wayne's book I want to read to you and just get your reflection. Wayne says, we don't forget, the book, I should say, the context is, it's written to pastors who are leading on empty. Wayne says, we don't forget that we are Christians. We forget we are human, and that one oversight alone can debilitate the potential of our future.
Yeah. Brilliant. And I think that when we recall the fact that the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, that Christ became human and hung out with us, and in his humanity he got tired. In his humanity he pulled apart from the crowd so he would not fall apart physically. So I think that if he really is our model, then we have to reflect on the idea that, okay, if the Word made flesh, most powerful person who ever lived, needed to pull away, needed to have a praycation, as it were, needed to prioritize and say, okay, right now I'm doing ministry, right now I'm to myself, right now I'm with my disciples, right now. So you talk about someone who had his thing prioritized. You don't get any better than Jesus. And so what Cordero is saying, I totally agree with. Because if we're not careful, it's like I said, if we don't come apart, we're going to fall apart.
Yes, sir. Three more things, Dr. Haynes, and I'm going to let you go. We got some other things to do. You got to preach tonight and trying to kill you, but I'm trying to get some help from you. As it relates to this idea of preaching preparation, any comments from you, Pastor, with regard to just preaching preparation? A lot of preachers and pastors now say, okay, I've done my school. I got my bachelor's, my master's, my MDiv, my PhD, whatever it is. I'm through. I'm done. I'm good. I ain't picking up another book. I ain't learning no more. Just a comment on that. I remember Manuel Scott Sr. saying that if preaching is not your main business, you have no business preaching. That the call to preach There's a call to preparation.
Right.
Does it stop after you got the letters, after you got the certificate on the wall? Your comments with that respect.
Well, and you call the name Manuel Scott. Another name I could call is Charles Adams, who has greatly influenced me. But anyway, both of them, and as a matter of fact, all the names we've listed have modeled for me that the more you find out, especially theologically, the less you know. And with that being the case, you know, we should always be hungry for knowledge. I'll illustrate it with this. One of the things that blessed me recently, Ray Lewis is about to play probably his last football game. And ESPN did this piece that blew me away. 1996, Tiger Woods, Ray Lewis, Derek Jeter, Kobe Bryant all went pro. All of them. And all of them have been transformational characters in their respective sports. They are models of excellence. They are champions. They are winners. And one of the things they pointed out that separates Tiger Woods, Kobe Bryant, Ray Lewis, Derek Jeter from everybody else is that they love their craft so much. They don't just love the game, they love practice.
They love it,
They love what happens before they get on stage. Michael Jordan, exactly. And any of the greats in their profession have been in love with what takes place before the game. And so that for me is a metaphor. That's analogous to preaching. Preaching is what we do. That's the game. Okay? But it's what you do before
the game, the practice.
You know, the practice. Work. If you don't love practice, you ain't serious about what takes place. All you are is a showman or a showwoman on Sunday. But if you love getting into the Word, if you love your devotion, your quiet time, whatever else I've discovered, if you honor God in private, God's going to honor you in public. And so with that being the case, man, for me, it's just been very important. I've recommitted myself to loving what I do before I get to the pulpit.
And preaching quite often is the overflow.
There it is.
I mean, it is literally the overflow of the time we spend with God during the week.
Ain't no question.
You know, and so if you ain't spending time with Him during the week, you
may to flow over.
Exactly. Exactly. Doc, you have, again, impacted so many people. Your preaching is insane. You know, and when I say that, I mean seriously. I mean, the Lord has blessed you. It's clear that you do some practice before you get in the pulpit. And it's been clear from the time, you know, we were both younger in the Bay Area. It's been clear up to this point. I'm sure we'll be clear in the future. And let me just say this. We talk a lot about, and we hear a lot about preaching styles. We tag and put terms on preaching. Narrative preaching, expository preaching, extemporaneous preaching, on and on it goes. Your preaching seems to include all of that. And Dr. Haynes, it's an amazing thing. There are a lot of guys who are very tuned in to one particular style. Some so much so that when they hear another person preach another style, they almost want to say, you ain't going to heaven. You know, because you have another style, another flavor, another flow. Question about what is Fredrick Haynes's approach to sermon preparation, and you are not locked in. You mentioned earlier, preaching in your generation. You are not locked in to a particular style of preaching. Seems like you're more locked in to a particular commitment to substance in your preaching. Last night, what you did last night, oh my goodness, that sermon, I got you. You know, you walked word for word. I mean, you did word studies on literally every word in the text. You were, of course, you know, Jeffrey Johnson says that there is no better illustrator, sermon illustrator in the country than you. So your illustrations were, you know, were there, practical application. What is your approach? What is your conviction about preaching? What is your approach? How does Freddie Haynes go about doing sermon?
Me, the whole time I'm preparing, I begin it with prayer. You know, I'm asking God, okay, I need to hear from you. And I don't say in Jesus' name, amen, until I get to the pulpit on Sunday. And so the whole thing is bathed in a spirit of prayer. You talk about praying without ceasing. That's exactly what I'm doing. So it begins on that note. I also am always in a series, and
Okay.
as a pastor, you know, I give it to you like this. I outline where we are going sermonically based on discussions with staff, members. Last August, give you an example, for 2013, you know, I just spent a lot of August, as well as the end of July, rather, end of July, beginning of August, talking with members. Okay, where are we as a church spiritually? Where are we as a church in terms of our maturity? Where are we? What are our weaknesses, our strengths, etc.? Well, once I got that, I began a prayer process. Okay, God, what do you want the church to look like? These are the needs.
Sure.
What do you want the church to look like?
Sure.
And how do I deal with that sermonically? And so that is how I basically outlined January through December where we're going this year by way of sermon series. And so I know December we'll be talking about such and such, because that, as a matter of fact, for me, one of the things that has happened over the years, our church has grown, so I have a whole new generation of people who are not aware of a lot.
Foundational
and
things.
So, foundational stuff. And so, though our praise and worship is strong, what has happened is that it's strong because I have a 3-time Grammy Award winning, you know, minister of music who can hype that thing up. But I have a congregation where you have some who are congregants and others who are spectators in an audience. And so that means I got to go back to the basics and teach praise and worship. What does it mean to engage in praise and worship? And so that's just an example of one of the things that came out of that, you know, kind of give and take. And so I had to give context to what I do every week. And so, again, bathed in prayer. It's been fed, informed by the needs of the congregation. And then on top of that, you know, I move into whatever the series may be. So the series, I've already outlined what my scriptures are going to be, the text. And the other thing Harry S. Wright taught me is, fortunately, I have, when you talk about illustrations, I have literally a book of illustrations I've come across through my own sermonic vision. Dr. Wright said you ought to approach life with sermonic eyes. I'll give you an example. I have an illustration I have yet to use, but I read, 2 weeks ago, USA Today, they were talking about this shelter, hurricane shelter, and it tripped me out. Hurricane shelter that they were having to condemn and demolish, not because of a hurricane, but because of termites.
Lord have mercy.
So
the inside.
It's withstood. It's withstood Hurricane Andrew, Katrina. All the hurricanes have hit it, and people have been saved by the shelter. But the hurricane shelter is being demolished because of termites.
My goodness.
Inside stuff, not just inside. Little stuff. Little stuff. And how many of us, if we're honest, we got a whole lot of stuff. I mean, when it comes to big stuff, church, for example, we can handle the big hits. You know. But all the while inside, the devil works through termites.
Reverend, I think I might use that Sunday. Go ahead, keep talking.
So what I'm suggesting, though, Doc, on a serious tip, is that I have a whole thing of illustrations. I'm just waiting to grab and use. You know,
all around us are illustrations.
All around. That's what Harris Wright told me. You know, and you know, who was it? Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Earth's aflame with heaven, every bush aflame with God, and only he who is holy takes off his shoes. So everywhere you look, you see, you know, illustrations of ideas and truth. And so I have that on the side. Of course, I get into the Word as I'm led. And as I get into the Word, Doc, basically, it depends on the text and its context. I'm going to always explore the context, which has a social, political, economic piece. I'm going to always get into the words and what they meant then. Kenneth Omer says that a text can't mean what it never meant. And so if it meant this back then, you know, you can't all of a sudden say, okay, well, it means this now. So you go back to what it meant to the original hearers. Man, one of the most powerful pieces I read on this, oh, man, I can't think of it. Ched Myers. Ched Myers does a piece on Mark, and he talks about how Mark 1, chapter 1, verse 1, powerful. the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And he says that Mark, in that first verse, which is the topic sentence of the book, arrests the attention of the Roman Christians. Why?
Sure.
Because chapter 1, verse 1 says, the beginning. And immediately, I'm a Christian in Rome with a Hebrew background.
Yeah.
First word I hear in there is beginning.
Yeah.
So my mind races in my scripture
Sure.
to Genesis 1 and 1.
Yeah.
So the Gospel of Mark is literally the regeneration of history. It's the new beginning,
Yeah.
ushered in by Jesus Christ. He says the beginning of the gospel. The word gospel, he says, don't just look at it what we've done to it today, because we sanitized it.
Sure.
In biblical antiquity, I'm a Christian in Rome. I hear gospel. That's what I get from the Roman propaganda, because whenever Rome goes to war, what happens is they don't have Twitter, Facebook, CNN or MSNBC. They have a runner, and the runner is at the front lines watching what's going on, and the runner then takes off, runs back to Rome and says to Rome, good news, Rome has won again. And so as a Christian, if I receive this letter from Mark, and Mark says the beginning of the good news, the gospel, and that's why Paul says in Romans, you know, blessed are, or how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good tidings. That's the context he's talking about. And so guess what? As a Christian in Rome, I get word of this good news, this gospel. Rome was won again? No, Jesus has won again. The ultimate victory has already taken place. I'm getting that in verse 1. The beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. That thing is just rich right there. And so I go back into every word, trying to ascertain what did it mean to the crowd when they heard it back then, and then I can update it and remix it.
Apply it.
Come on now to what's happening right now.
You know, A. Lewis Patterson, I think I told you earlier, in terms of just listening to preachers, I have listened to more CDs, tapes, whatever of A. Lewis Patterson than I have any other single person. I listen to CDs and sermons and tapes all the time. I'm reading a sermon, I'm reading a book. Again, I'm a preacher, so that's what I do, in part. But one of the things, and I've used it over and over again, that A. Lewis Patterson says, is that when we look at 23 out of 27 books in the New Testament, Jesus Christ is mentioned by name or inference in the first chapter, and the first, second, or third verse, he's mentioned immediately. So he rushes to make this point. Pastor Patterson says that if we have a problem in preaching, is that we don't get around to talking about Jesus fast enough. You know, he says we get around to him, but often it's after the fact. And what you just pointed out, even in the Gospel of Mark, is the beginning of the gospel of Jesus. You know, and so that's a major piece. As you talk about your preaching preparation, and again, Pastor, fascinating to me. One of the things that we see today is that a lot of guys just don't talk about Calvary anymore, or the cross, or even the resurrection. Sanitize the gospel. Each night that you've preached here, both nights so far, you've closed with Calvary. Some people say if you don't go to Calvary, I'm going back old school now, then it's quote unquote not the gospel. Yet you don't have to say certain words to make it the gospel. Would you speak to that in terms of your preaching? And you move from, I think, kind of a contextual explanation to illustration, application. You have celebration. In your celebration, does the preacher have to do that in order to have a gospel message, as it were?
Well, I mean, for me, Jerry Carter brilliantly said that thing last night when he did his piece on Revelation. You know, Christ, the Lamb, crucified, stood up. That was so brilliant, man. In one, he's slain in perpetuity, in perpetuity, standing up, signifying, of course, the resurrection. So for me, the message,
he hit it already.
It's got to be in there. It's got to be in there, either through direct statements, or it has to be inferred, portrayed, or implied. But somewhere in there, if it's authentic preaching, I mean, that's the gospel, the good news. Because again, if the gospel meant back then good news, Rome has won, or it also meant, according to Ched Myers, it also meant that one king is dead and another king has ascended. So if that's what the gospel meant back then, and we call ourselves preaching the gospel, we at least have to declare, number one, there's a new king.
Sure.
Number two, that we've won.
Yeah.
Because of what our king has accomplished.
Wonderful. Pastor, listen, I'm not going to hold you. My last question is this, because, I got a lot I could ask you, but I'm not trying to take you out early. You got to preach tonight and all of that. And I'm asking almost everybody this last question. You're busy. You got a lot going on, a lot of things you're involved with politically, socially, in terms of civic work, preaching the gospel, evangelistic work, pastoring, husband, father. What do you do to relax? In addition to these other things, what does Fredrick Douglass Haynes III enjoy? What do you do to chill, to relax, that you might be able to help us with?
Right. Attending sporting events. I'm blessed to have athletes in Dallas who attend our church, and so I have season tickets to Cowboys games. I used to have season tickets to the Mavericks. I just go now when I want to go. I also would love to get a massage, especially when I'm traveling a lot, and if I stay at a nice resort, such as the ones they have in Arizona, I'll get a nice massage. If I don't, then of course I don't get to relax, and so I miss out on that.
Mercy.
And then reading for me is really relaxing, and then finally, every now and then get some bowling in, play a little basketball, all of that, stuff that is away from the normal piece, and then I really enjoy working out. I got a good workout team I work out with, and so if I ever get a massage, man, that just sets it right
all off.
Doc. Oh my God!
Let me just say this to those watching online. I love Fredrick Haynes III. He's kind of got a little dig in on me right now, so let me just out him real quick. Before he came, I promised to do several things for him, and I meant what I said. However, when he got here, listen, World Wide Web, every resort in our immediate vicinity was absolutely booked. I'm talking about the Wild Horse Pass, Beach Resort, others. Dr. Haynes over here coughing. He's not really coughing. He's trying to cut me with the cough. But now listen, I want to say to him on the web that when he comes back again, he's already privately committed to come back again to do our revival next year. If he does not, then y'all know. Y'all need to pray for him. But when he comes back again, we're going to put him in the resort of his choice. We just didn't put him in a faraway one because of the distance. And so we're going to do that again and make a masseuse available at your disposal. Dr. Haynes, I love you like cooked food, Doc, and I thank God for you. Appreciate you so much.
Love you, brother.
Thank you, man, for coming and for taking this extra time to share with me seriously. And thank you again for your preaching ministry, the way you've influenced so many of us. And so, man, I thank God for you. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
All right. Amen.